World War II was one of the deadliest wars to reach our planet, with millions of casualties throughout the 6 years this war was fought. One of the hardest hit fronts was the Eastern Front. During this time, one of the hardest fought battles was the Battle of Stalingrad, which lasted 5 months. The Germans took control of the city, but it would be surrounded and the Germans would have to surrender to the Soviets. To the Germans, Stalingrad was just another stop on the way to the rich oil fields of Baku in the Caucasus. The Germans in our timeline attacked Stalingrad for numerous reasons. For one, to have a road to get the oil from the Baku oil fields. 2, to take over the industrial capital of Russia and to slow the Russian war effort. And 3, Hitler saw taking over the city as a good propaganda piece. Because, let's be honest, wouldn't you want to humiliate your enemy by controlling a city named after them? Exactly. In this timeline, a few changes are made to allow for victory at Stalingrad. The biggest one is the encirclement of the city to starve it out, and to bomb it to the ground. In 1943, the siege ends for a German victory with the plan to advance to Baku. That little old Georgian man was angry by Mr. Mustachio's takeover of his city. Hitler asked for peace with the Russians, but Stalin refused. So the German army continued pushing through into Russian territory. The Russians would have lost an industrial center of theirs, and would be at risk of having the Germans get to the oil fields of Baku. In March of 1943, the Germans reached Astrakhan, a city on the coast of Caspian, and won the battle. Separating the Caucasus from the mainland, the Germans began pushing south to capture the Caucasus. Stalin would order Operatsia Rosenschnee, aka Operation Destruction. The oil fields in the Caucasus would be burning, and the city of Baku was on call for a Soviet bombing to render it useless. The Soviet army now volunteers from across the USSR to keep control of Baku and to fight the Germans, who seemed to look like they would be winning this war. The Second Battle of Astrakhan occurred, forcing German troops to retreat back to Astrakhan. The Russians would have taken it over in 2 months and begin an encirclement tactic around German-controlled Caucasus. But then, they would need to regain Stalingrad. Stalingrad was bombed once again by the Soviets, and a 4-month battle along with encirclement of the city, while other armies would push the Germans back or surround their forces. Russia would get back Stalingrad in December of 1943. The Soviets wouldn't have as much oil as they used to when it came to fighting the Germans, and when a major industrial center was knocked off the grid, the Soviets' advancement backed into Eastern and Central Europe, where they were slowed. The D-Day landings in June of 1944 allowed for some diversion of German troops to the west, allowing for more advances from the Russian army. The British landed troops in Greece in 1944 to liberate it from the Germans. The Soviets were at this point pushing into the Ukraine. Due to wanting to focus on the German war effort, the Soviet-Finnish War was put to an end, allowing for Finland to keep the territories it gained in the war between the two. But it wasn't allowed to fight alongside the Germans and had to help against them. In November, all of Greece was liberated by the partisans and British forces, but now it was time to take over regional countries. Stalin requested to Churchill a creation of a zone of influence, with Stalin requesting control over Yugoslavia and Romania post-war. The British would gain influence over Bulgaria, Greece, and Albania, and would expand past those borders. By December of 1944, the Soviets liberated most of their lands and began a push to take over the Baltics and the rest of the Ukraine. In January of 1945, they began an invasion of Romania, while the Allied troops finished invading France and Belgium. The time was up for the Germans, and when the Allied soldiers went in and invaded southern and western Germany, while Czech and Polish partisans liberated their respective countries, mostly. The Allies would surround Berlin in mid-May of 1945. Hitler would kill himself on May 20th, and the Germans would surrender on May 25th, 1945. The Soviets would gain eastern Poland and would puppet Romania, Slovakia, Hungary, and Yugoslavia. Germany would be divided up between the four zones, but East Germany would retain some of Silesia and East Prussia. The Cold War would continue, but the outcome would end up the same with a Soviet collapse. Poland, Bulgaria, and Albania would be far more westernized, and Poland would become a European power due to having its own liberty to do as it wishes.